Was the SEO Summit 2024 a setup? Jaishankar for raining fire on Pakistan. Pakistan, the hub of three evils for decades. China-Pakistan breakup Kashmir issue. Now Pak attempts foiled by Vishwaguru. Even as Pakistan and China dragged Kashmir into the SCO summit, India's Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar did not mince words as he called Pakistan out when he said that if there's a lack of trust and inadequate cooperation, introspection is needed. He also said that if friendship has fallen short and good neighborliness is missing, there are surely reasons to introspect and causes to address. At the just concluded 23rd Shanghai Cooperation Summit in Islamabad, Dr. Jaishankar ensured that even his veiled jibe at Pakistan was crystal clear in its messaging. The External Affairs Minister referred to the SCO Charter to point out that countries must be firm and uncompromising in countering the three evils of terrorism, separatism, and extremism. In fact, he went on to say that if these three evils continue at the border, they are hardly likely to encourage trade, energy flows, connectivity, and people-to-people exchanges in parallel. In an indication to China and Pakistan, Minister Jaishankar said that cooperation must be based on mutual respect and sovereign equality. India, in fact, also stood its stance against One Belt, One Road initiative and opted out of signing the support document at the summit. Let's get a more clearer perspective on this on the broadcast on Global Mirror. I'm joined by Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, former High Commissioner to Pakistan. Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, good evening. Namaskar. Welcome to Global Mirror. So my first question, today the External Affairs Minister did take a whale jibe at Pakistan when he talked about extremism and terrorism, but he was very clear in his messaging. Your first thoughts on that? Also, would it have any impact on Pakistan?
It's a much wider speech. I've just seen it in the media. I haven't seen the full address, but it's a much wider address. But of course, he mentioned terrorism, separatism, and extremism in his speech. And this is in keeping with the emphasis that we have always been laying on these particular aspects. He also spoke of sovereignty, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. And some media reports I see have interpreted it as, the CPEC passing through India's illegally occupied territory, etc. But maybe those were hints because you cannot directly talk of bilateral issues there. But I find that his speech was then much broader. He spoke of various aspects of cooperation that are possible, connectivity. He spoke of India's own experience in some areas from where SCO members can learn. But of course, as you said right at the beginning, he also emphasized the importance of introspection. When there is lack of trust and relationships are not working out, at least the country is concerned, and the hint was quite clear, need to introspect what has gone wrong. And what has gone wrong has been quite clear.
So, India opted out of signing the support statement by the SCO member countries on One Belt, One Road initiative of China. Clearly reiterating its stance that we will not support the notorious expansionist and dominance plans of China.
Well, as you know, from the beginning, we haven't associated ourselves with China's One Belt, One Road initiative, or CPEC, etc., for various reasons. One, of course, that CPEC passes through, as I said earlier, areas of belonging to India, illegally occupied by Pakistan. But there have been larger concerns of what it has meant for the countries that have joined China's One Belt One Road initiative. As you know, many of those countries have ended up with a debt trap, with very, very heavy debt burden. Pakistan itself is facing that problem. They talked of $62 billion worth of investment in CPEC initially. The investment has been of the order of about $25 billion. It's gone much slower, but even that has added on so much to Pakistan's burden, debt burden. So recently, when they concluded a program with the IMF, one of the conditions of IMF was to ensure rollover of the Chinese debt in particular and from other creditors to make sure that it's a sustainable plan over the next 3 or 4 years. So I'm not surprised. It said this is in keeping with our earlier position.
Sir, India has been pitching itself as the voice of the global south, as a representative of the concerns of countries that represent the global south. But with a grouping like the SCO, where Pakistan and China are present, how much of this grouping and platform can be used by India to pitch itself as the voice of global south?
Look, first of all, let me say that all multilateral platforms have their problems. So, you have an agenda, you have your goals and so on, which you wish to attain. But these are groupings of sovereign countries, so problems can always arise one way or the other. You mentioned SCO in particular. Now, it's of interest to us because of various reasons. First, the members of this grouping constitute a large part of the territory of Eurasia. If you include Russia, China, and India, three big countries, large part of population of Eurasia, large segment of GDP of Eurasia, again because of China, India, and to some extent Russia. So it's an important grouping from that angle, and its deliberations are important for us. There are some countries with certain orientations. For example, China and Russia, they tend to take, anti-Western sort of orientation. For us, that's not something that we would like to do. But we believe in, as has been said earlier, in multi-alignment. Build partnership in areas of common interest with all countries, which we can also. And our partnership, our growing relationship with the West doesn't rule out that we cannot build a relationship with other countries. So, to answer to your question, I think it's difficult to say, how effectively we can use it. But I think it's a foothold, it's a membership, which, in my opinion, we should continue to value. At least it gives us access to what is being discussed there, make our contribution, try and influence things to the extent possible. And that in itself is a gain. Again, this grouping, originally it started with its focus on Central Asia, which is an area of prime interest to us, both for our security and our connectivity westwards.
Sir, I want to talk about that family picture that came out of the SEO Summit today, and you would know this better than any of us as to how diplomacy works, the kind of positioning that leaders of different countries have at such platforms, and the kind of messaging that the host country wants to send out. Now, we saw Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif being flanked by leaders of China and Russia on either side. With the Russia-Ukraine war, we know that India has maintained a neutral stance, and we have not said anything against Russia, despite the kind of Western pressures that we have been put through. In tough times, if push comes to shove, can India still rely on Russia?
No, I think it's an old relationship. It's an old partnership with Russia, with the former Soviet Union, then with the Russian Federation. We have common interests. We have areas of difference also. It's not as if we agree on everything, but we have had an extremely important, for example, defense relationship over the years. And that sources of supply are being diversified, but it's still a relationship which remains extremely important. Then, of course, we have bought a lot of oil from Russia in the last few years. And we have a common interest in many areas. Russia has supported us over the years on various issues. This seeing things in black and white. Some people say that because Russia is too close to China now, and in a way, in some respects, dependent on China, this may impair their ability to sustain a relationship with India, especially if there is a conflict and so on. I do not look at things that way. As you know, our Prime Minister visited Russia earlier this year, and it remains an important relationship for us. Again, I would say we should not look at it in those, narrow zero-sum terms.
Ambassador Sabharwal, even before the SEO summit started, there was a clarification from India that this is only for the SEO summit, that the Indian External Affairs Minister is visiting Pakistan, and there will be no bilateral meeting. But as it started, the likes of Bilawal Bhutto have been urging both sides, specifically India, to have a bilateral or at least a push-aside meeting, pull-aside meeting with the Pakistani leadership. Now, India has made it clear that this will not happen. This is not a bilateral visit, and terror and talks will not go hand in hand. Do you see it as a Pakistani ploy to set the narrative that, we've been asking for talks, but India is not responding? India is unwilling to have the conversation.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. There are two statements I have seen. Nawaz Sharif. Now, Nawaz Sharif, when he says he wants to improve relations, etc., etc., this is something which he has said for a long time. And he's perhaps the only major politician in Pakistan who has had the courage to speak on this subject openly, including during election campaigns. Bilawal Bhutto, as you know, when he came for the ministerial meeting here, he created all kinds of problems. So to an extent, yes, I agree with you that it's a way of, telling the world. Pakistanis always try to do so that, we are very reasonable. It's the Indians who are not talking. But look at the realities. Pakistan continues to stick to India withdrawing its August 5, 2019 move for any bilateral engagement. And that's not going to happen. You impose an impossible condition. This was imposed by them in August 2019, soon after India withdrew the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. They didn't have an effective answer, so they took a series of measures which were, very short-sighted, and this was one of them. And because of political polarization, it has not been possible for them to climb down from it. Then again, their anti-India rhetoric has been very, very high in the Pakistani establishment. Shahbaz Sharif's statement at the UN General Assembly was not a signal for a sincere engagement. Then again, if you look at it, Pakistan is so absorbed internally with its problems, whether it's economy, its terrorism, its problems of its western frontier. This is all these things rule out any major foreign policy move by Pakistan or any major significant development in the India-Pakistan bilateral relationship. So this again, is a way of putting things. We are willing to talk, but I think India has clarified its position.
Yeah,
action that our government has been taking, and I must say that on our side also, the space for diplomacy with Pakistan has shrunk over the years because of the justified anger of Indian public at Pakistan's actions in the past. So barring a miracle, I would say, people have been talking of a bilateral engagement. There could always be, a pull-aside impromptu meeting. These are not ruled out in such cases. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but as I said, these are not unknown in such cases. But barring a miracle to expect, something big to come out on bilateral front, the chances remain slim. But since our minister has gone, this may be an opportunity, possibly, I'm saying possibly, to gauge the mood of the Pakistani establishment behind their very jarring public rhetoric.
Sir, I want to talk about the domestic challenges that Pakistan has been facing. And, when it's unstable, obviously India as a neighbor will have an impact. But when it's stable, even then, India needs to be careful because then Pakistan gets overconfidence and it wants to be notorious at the borders. In such a situation, how does India move forward with Pakistan then?
Well, that's a tricky situation. These both these possibilities. If Pakistan were to fall apart, as some people predict, that will not be good news for us. That will leave us with an unbridled sea of turmoil and extremism next door. When Pakistan has been more confident, on a sure footing, it has been very adventurous. But I believe, and this is my belief, that it's a problem. It remains a problem. Normalization of relationship remains, I would say, a distant goal as of now. It seems, and unless the Pakistani state itself puts its act together, Pakistan itself becomes a normal country. It's a very dysfunctional country. How do you normalize your relationship completely with an abnormal country? While that is not there, I believe we have to manage this relationship. And in that management, I have always believed that in addition to, exercising deterrence and a punitive approach, use of force, etc., diplomacy always has a role. And that's what I was saying, that possibly it may offer an opportunity to our minister to gauge the mood, how things are. If we can calm our western border a little more, beyond the ceasefire of February 2021, that is to our advantage because, our focus of years over Pakistan as our primary threat has shifted to China now for obvious reasons. And there is a strong case, therefore, to keep this border calmer, so that we can focus more on the other side. This is one point from our side, which aside from now, elections have taken place in Jammu and Kashmir. And the people of Jammu and Kashmir have once again thumpingly endorsed the democratic path under Constitution of India. This is an opportunity to take Kashmir in a new direction. Everyone acts, we all act maturely on that issue. But Pakistan can always act as a spoiler. So, the need to neutralize that to make sure it doesn't do so. So there are some factors on our side which demand that we try and make the western border calmer. Still, there are much stronger factors on the Pakistani side to keep their eastern border with India calmer. Look at their internal problems. Look at their problems with Afghanistan, the Taliban there, and with terrorism, etc., etc. And I hope they understand those imperatives better, and that would induce some new thinking in Pakistan.
Sir, I want to understand from you. SCO has the likes of Pakistan and Central Asian countries. These regions are Muslim-dominated countries, and they share close relationship with China. And what's interesting and what's ironic is the fact that none of them has ever called China out on the kind of situation Uyghur Muslims are in or the kind of oppression they face in China. Is it just that the Chinese investment and Chinese money is dominating and that's why nobody's speaking about it?
Well, people go by their national interests. So, if they have an important relationship with China, they'll try avoid talking on that issue. Incidentally, you talked of the Islamic angle. Pakistanis have always believed that, they have a natural affinity with Central Asian countries because they are also, people believe in Muslim faith. But Central Asian countries have been much more secular in their approach. They broke away from the Soviet Union. The leadership has been much more secular and so on. To the point on Xinjiang, Uyghurs issue, Pakistan, which has been talking of the plight of Muslims all over the world, forget about Kashmir, but everywhere else has been completely silent on it. This is hypocrisy of the first order. But then this is how countries act according to their national interests. And Pakistan has a very important relationship with China.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sharat Sabharwal, for speaking with us on Global Mirror and giving us a clearer perspective on this entire SEO summit and, of course, India's perspective of it. Thank you very much, sir.